We humans, as social primates, have been looking at faces since our very start. Even as infants, we prefer to look at and pay more attention to faces that are attractive. And this bias towards attractiveness follows us throughout our lives. We quickly make personality trait judgments based upon very short exposure to faces that last just 100 milliseconds. In other words, it only takes 1/10 of a second for us to make up our mind about someone. From these extremely quick judgments of such traits as competence, trustworthiness, and attractiveness, we form conclusions about someone's leadership abilities. Indeed, inferences about competence and related traits such as intelligence and leadership skills have led to accurate election predictions about governors' races, races for the Senate, and races for the House of Representatives in the United States. These findings have been replicated across cultures and nations so that not only have Americans predicted American races, people from different countries have accurately predicted elections in Australia, Finland, France, Ireland, Italy, Japan, Mexico, and the United Kingdom. First impressions matter in politics. The face matters in political races. One of my mentors, Jim Schubert, was an early pioneer in this election-based work. After his work on the 2000 presidential election, where he predicted that the most attractive individuals in the primaries, Al Gore and George W. Bush, would be the nominees for the respective parties, he had his research published on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. Now, one of the presidential candidates, not Al Gore or George W. Bush, who was a senator at the time, threatened to have his National Institute of Health funding pulled. But the point is the face matters. And more recently, we have found that such scholars as Brian Spisak and colleagues have found that facial attractiveness matters. Facial attractiveness is a first-order facial cue that significantly biases our leadership preferences. When we make our split-second judgments based upon facial characteristics, we first consider how attractive the face is. From there, we consider such things as how familiar the face is to us, and then we consider the health of the face and how we perceive the intelligence and the competence of the individual to deal with whatever issue is facing us when we make our decisions. When it comes to entertainment, we expect that attractiveness matters. Whether it's movie, television, or media stars, we know that they're going to be outliers for their level of attractiveness. However, according to work by Hammermesh and colleagues in 1994, beautiful people earned more even in those jobs where physical appearance meant little for job performance. There was a premium of 5% for being above average in attractiveness, and a penalty for being below average attractiveness of 7%. Even in arenas where we expect competence matters more than attractiveness, such as athletics, there is a beauty premium. A study of 138 NFL quarterbacks from 1995 to 2009 found that facial symmetry from one standard deviation below to one standard deviation above the mean led to 11.8% more salary, or $338,000 per year, regardless of performance. Likewise, a study of 132 LPGA golfers from 1992 to 2010 found attractive female golfers indirectly increased their tournament prize money 31%, $127,520 through their efforts in competition, mainly because this drew other people to watch them. When we consider this beauty premium, it might be due to three things. The first is more attractive people might be more confident. Secondly, employers might experience a halo effect by perceiving those that are more attractive as having greater capabilities. And thirdly, more attractive people have better communication and social skills by virtue of their being approached by others more often than the past. Now, on the other hand, Guodong Guo and colleagues found that there is an ugliness premium for college football coaches. In their study of NCAA head football coaches from 2014 to 2016, Those coaches having an average salary of $2 million per year, and after taking into account wins and losses from the previous year, their tenure at the school, and their age, having an aggressive and ugly face matters in how much money they make. However, being unattractive matters more than anything else. It leads to a salary increase of 22%. Being ugly is also associated with more fans attending games. The authors argue this might be due to uglier coaches being better recruiters of young men by signaling mental and physical toughness. Sir Francis Galton, the mathematical genius who gave us the statistical law of large numbers, in which the more people who guess about something, the more accurate their average guess was interested in finding out what was the typical facial appearance for different groups of people. In his creating a typical face of a criminal and a typical face of a vegetarian, he looked at overlaying photographic plates of individual examples, and he noticed something. This composite face was more attractive. Now, replication of this over the years finds that this is indeed the case still. 16 and 32 face composites are rated as more attractive than individual faces on their own, or composites that are made up of fewer faces. The question is this because of blurring and smoothing out of the faces in the composite process, the youthfulness of the faces, or their symmetry? Now, that's an open scientific question. However, cross-culturally, the average face is seen as more attractive than individual faces, regardless of the culture. But what about symmetry? Averageness might just be a reflection of symmetry, but we do have a preference for symmetry in nature, even when something asymmetric points to the symmetry, such as a beauty mark. Now, classic work by Randy Thornhill and Stephen Gangestad suggests that we have this preference for symmetry due to it reflecting the lack of parasites or pathogens in an organism. For instance, seeing leaves that are perfectly symmetric is oddly satisfying because it reflects a healthy tree. In other words, there is a level of biophilia, or love of nature, and our nature appreciation shows up in our perceptions of leaves, trees, butterflies, animals, and birds. An example of symmetry in action refers to peacocks that have symmetric and colorful tails, and they are more successful as mates than those who are not as symmetric. Now, when scientists measure for symmetry, we'll look at specific attributes. The image that we see here shows the different points at which the face can be measured to identify not just symmetry, but also for identifying those predominantly male and female facial characteristics. Now, one of the basic measures that may be used, and it's a very simple one, is the facial width to height ratio, or the FWHR. This ratio is used to determine the width of a person's face compared to its height, obviously. To calculate your own, you need to divide your facial width at the widest area of your face by the distance between the middle of your eyebrows and your upper lips. With this, individuals who have more square faces are perceived as being more dominant, potentially because it signals higher levels of testosterone. The facial width to height ratio plays a role in leader perceptions, with broader faces being seen as more dominant, yet less intelligent. Here, intelligence is seen as the opposite of dominance when we consider our leaders. What is most interesting about this is seen in a study by Brian Spisak and his colleagues when they consider health as a factor. By considering facial coloration, people make judgments concerning the health and abilities of a potential leader. Spisak and his colleagues added more yellow and red to simulate skin associated with being higher in carotenoid, which in turn is related to increased fruit and vegetable consumption. When they considered leader selection in 4 different leadership scenarios, they found that health has a significant effect on leadership selection, as does intelligence. Whether in situations involved with cooperation, competition, exploration, or exploitation, health matters. Intelligence, on the other hand, mattered only in the exploration and cooperation conditions. In other words, there's something else going on here. One of the more important findings regarding facial characteristics is that the masculinity and femininity of the face matters and who we think is best suited to lead us when we're dealing with different types of threats. In yet another study by Spisak and colleagues, he found that more masculine faces were preferred when dealing with external threats such as war. Feminine faces were preferred when maintaining a group's solidarity was seen as most important. In other words, we prefer the feminine face when dealing with problems within our group, and a masculine face when dealing with threats from outside our group. Now, this does not mean that we're choosing males over females for leadership positions or vice versa. What it means is that the structure of the face matters in terms of masculinity and femininity of an individual and the expectations regarding their leadership abilities. We can conclude that faces matter, but they are contingent on matching the situation with the face.